Thanks very much for sticking with us tonight. And I just got a really neat email. Just thought I should let you know one of the passages you quoted a few minutes ago is having an impact here. Maybe that's why I'm listening at home tonight. A few days ago, my husband and I were talking about something, I don't remember exactly what, and came to the conclusion that we want to get out of the hole financially, but we don't want to be like the fool in the Bible who kept accumulating things and building bigger barns and thought he had it made. Our 12-year-old daughter heard the conversation. Later on, when I was reading that day's Bible passage with her in the room, that exact story was that day's reading. That grabbed the attention of both of us. Then, as I was listening tonight, you brought up the exact same Bible passage. I ran into my daughter's room and told her. She got really big, excited eyes. I don't know the reason for this, but I'm definitely praying and asking God, what is this all about? My daughter's interpretation? She looked at her friend and giggled and said, my mom's being stalked by the Bible. I would suggest the Lord is definitely trying to say something to you. What? That's between you and the Lord. Pray. He'll show you. He'll show you. But thank you for that, because that's a wonderful encouragement for me, too. So thank you. So, I am a flower quickly fading. What else can we look at? Well, I use this as the backdrop for our teaching tonight, and I saw this earlier tonight, and I had to chuckle. Sorry, the light's going to go kind of weird on us back and forth there for a second. Because they don't have earthquakes in Indiana. Well, they did this morning. 3.8. They estimate it was at about 3 miles deep down in the Earth's core. Hit around 6:55 a.m. local time. No reports of injuries or damages. It was 50 miles northeast of Indianapolis. A local newspaper, the Indy Star, reports a woman was sitting on her couch when the house began to rattle and shake. It lasted about 7 seconds. Twitter wrote that their houses shook, doors rattled. It sounded like rolling thunder. In Howard County, the sheriff's deputy there, Steve Rogers, says that the department was bombarded by phone calls after the quake from people wondering what happened. Some people thought they heard a loud boom. The Indiana University geologist Michael Hamburger, really, can you imagine? I wouldn't want to be that guy. Told Indianapolis Television that the quake was felt across central Indiana and into western Ohio. The trembler occurred in an area that is seismically very quiet. The quake initially recorded a magnitude 4.2, but upon review they downgraded to a 3.8. Most of North America east of the Rocky Mountains has infrequent earthquakes. A magnitude 4.0 eastern U.S. earthquake typically can be felt at many places as far as 60 miles from where it occurred, and it infrequently causes damage. The most damaging earthquake to hit the state occurred on September 27, 1909, near the Illinois border. Some chimneys fell, several buildings' walls were cracked, light connections were severed, and pictures shaken off the wall. I don't know. I have read the prophecy that talks about the zones of safety in America. It talks about a massive earthquake along the New Madrid Fault. And then you see a quake like this. I don't know. Grumblings, groanings of creation, longing for its creator, and the return of Christ. I don't know. They don't have earthquakes in Indiana. I don't know. We'll see. There was a great story today, and I'm pulling this out of Newser. If you want the whole of it, you go to USA Today, and the whole of it is there. But the short version is really the headline. 2010, the year we stopped talking to each other. You know how I'm just so upset with the tickety, and I've pared down my Facebook friends from over 1,500 down to about 150. You know, I actually get to go through all my friends' postings now and see what's going on in people's lives. You know, there are times where I've looked and I've called rather than there have been times I've tickety, I admit. But there have been times, too, where I went, hey, you okay? Or, hey, that's really cool. Or, hey, why don't we get together? But the truth of it is that in 2010, it's tickety-tickety. In the seemingly unending onslaught of best and worst of 2010 stories, a declaration that's a mix, in USA Today, Sharon Jason dubs 2010 the year we stopped talking to each other. The upside, we're Facebook BFFs with Kimmy from high school. The downside, we check email on dates. And I confess, I will be in a meeting and I'll get a beep beep and I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, sorry. I was in a meeting yesterday. Really wonderful person, really godly person. Well, it doesn't matter if they're godly or not. They deserve respect. They're a person. And I kept looking at and it's like, Vince, what are you doing? And I kept looking at my droid. And we all do it now. I mean, it's become, we're in conversation and we'll check our email while we're talking. We're texting while we're driving. Our days are filled with beeps and pings, many of which pull us away from tasks at hand or face-to-face conversations. We may feel that the distractions are too much, but we can't seem to stop texting and surfing and checking the emails. Experts say it's time to give our behaviors a cold, hard look. Considering 93% of us have cell phones or wireless devices and are literally sending trillions of text messages a year, we're now truly experiencing this kind of critical mass, says one communication studies professor. And the result? When we're literally standing next to someone, we can no longer assume that we have their full attention. And what's the result of that? Who knows? We don't know the net consequence of reducing the quality of relationship with the person you're with while improving or maintaining it with the person you're electronically tied to. Relationship. It is something the Lord He can see down the road. He knows there's going to be an earthquake in Indiana. He knows we're going to need each other. He's telling us to come into relationship with one another. Much like Daniel warned, or Joseph rather warned Egypt and the house of Israel. There's bad times coming. We need to prepare. I'm telling you, the Lord is warning us. There's bad times coming. We need to prepare. Garden? Yes. Get onto the land if you're led to? Yes. Come into relationship so that you've got people to stand with and to stand with you when things get bad and scary and dark. Tickety, tickety, tickety. What happens if tickety, tickety, tickety isn't there anymore? What happens if this doesn't work anymore? And you ain't got no friends, and you ain't got no relationships. You ain't got nothing. God is warning us. We still have time. I think we've got about, at the outside, 2 years. But we've got to use every minute. Remember my exhortation to you, to fast, to pray, to seek the Lord. Ask Him what your calling is. Ask Him what your giftings are. Ask Him where you fit in. In essence, really, what we just learned as far as our days and submitting our plans to the Lord. It's the same thing. And if we'll do it, He will make our paths straight. Even if there is a New Madrid fault, earthquake, even if there is an EMP, even if there is an economic collapse. On the heels of all of this, a headline that should catch people's attention. It's written by Peter Foster, who is in Beijing. He's writing for the Telegraph newspaper. The headline reads, China preparing for armed conflict in every direction. In the coming 5 years, our military is going to push forward preparations for military conflict in every strategic direction. So says Lang Guangli in an interview published by several state-backed newspapers in China. We may be living in peaceful times, but we can never forget war. Send the horses south or put the bayonets and guns away. China repeatedly says it's planning a peaceful rise, but the recent pace and scale of its military modernization has alarmed many neighbors in the Asian Pacific, including Japan, who describes China's military buildup as of global concern. Mr. Lang's remarks come at a time of increasingly difficult relations between the Chinese and U.S. armed forces, which a 3-day visit by his counterpart, Robert Gates, is intended to address. A year ago, China froze substantive military relations in protest at U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, and relations deteriorated further when China objected to U.S. plans to deploy one of their nuclear supercarriers, the U.S. George Washington, into the Yellow Sea off the Korean Peninsula. China has also announced this month it's preparing to launch its own aircraft carrier in the next year, a signal that China is determined to punch its weight as a rising superpower. The news came a year earlier than U.S. defense analysts had predicted. China also has carrier-killing ballistic missiles that could sink U.S. carriers from afar. U.S. Navy Commander Admiral Robert Willard told Japan's Asahi Shimbun newspaper this week he believes the Chinese anti-ship missile, the Dongfeng, has already achieved initial operational capability. As China modernizes, Mr. Liang pledged that its armed forces would also increasingly use homegrown Chinese technology, which analysts say may still lag behind Western technology, but China is racing to catch up. The modernization of Chinese military cannot depend on others and cannot be bought, Liang added. In the next 5 years, our economy and society will develop faster, boosting comprehensive national power. We will take the opportunity and speed up modernization of our military. China preparing for conflict in every direction. So says their defense minister. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and He will make your paths straight. Commit all of your plans to Him. God knows if there's going to be a earthquake in Indiana. Now here's something else to really pray about. Something like this, you'll see, and on a secular plane you may start to react, and I'm encouraging you to pray about this. And I don't mean this arrogantly. I've been praying about this story and stories like it for quite some time, and I really do believe the Lord's given me some insight on all of this. First, the story. And you're going to hear it and go, oh, finally. The jobless claims hit the lowest level since July of 2008. New claims for unemployment benefits dropped more than expected last week to their lowest level in more than 2 years. Now, this is where the propaganda kicks in, suggesting the labor market recovery is gaining strength. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits fell 34,000 to a seasonally adjusted 388,000, the lowest reading since early July 2008. Well below the economist's expectation of 415,000. The prior week's claims figure was revised modestly up to 422,000. Okay, first, just on a logistics level, let's look at this. Somehow, the number of jobless claims over the week of Christmas dropped 12 plus 22 is 34,000. Do you think it dropped 34,000? Or do you think that people just got caught up in Christmas and didn't bother filing over the Christmas season? Maybe they were away at family. Maybe they just didn't bother. I suspect that Christmas had a lot more to do with the jobs claims falling than an economy that somehow has perked up. Remember, we need 250,000 jobs per month for 5 years created in America to get back to 2007 employment levels. Last month, there were 39,000 jobs created. Does anybody really believe these numbers on face value? Now, I'll tell you something else. I believe we're going to see false indicators for the next 12 months, maybe even 18 months. And a lot of people are going to look and divine and read the tea leaves and use their worldly acumen and go, we're out of it. We're out of it. Everything's going to be okay. And then the debt bubble is going to burst and the collapse. You heard people report today when they heard the earthquake, it sounded like rolling thunder. You will hear on the day that our economy collapses, you will hear it. You will hear it. And it will be like rolling thunder across this country. But with all of the money, albeit just about worthless money, being pumped into the economy right now, there's going to be false indicators and stories like this that people are going to go, oh, without really thinking it through. Wait a second, this makes no logical sense. That we've been trending, and then all of a sudden, fewer job unemployment claims. Oh, wait a second, it was over the week of Christmas. You think maybe people were at mom's house, uncle's house? Maybe they just didn't bother claiming this week? Never thought of that. Maybe some of them were honest and said, you know what, I wasn't available for work this week because I was at my mom's house 500 miles away. They paid for the gas for us to get there. Be careful. Be careful. Pray. Put your plans before the Lord. Put this story before the Lord. Father, give me wisdom on this. What's really happening here? Give me insight, Lord. Is this really that the economy is turning around, or Father, is this false hope? I'm pretty confident that I know what the Lord's going to tell you. Consider what we've done to future generations. In the past 30 years, you could say what we've done is criminal. 30 years ago, the U.S. national debt was under $1 trillion. At the time, was considered a national crisis at $1 trillion. Today, the national debt is 14 times larger. And at this point, from a financial standpoint, it is the apocalypse. We've literally sold our children and grandchildren into perpetual debt and slavery. We've accumulated the biggest mountain of debt in the history of the world. Our children, grandchildren are burdened with it for the rest of their lives, if the Lord should tarry, and I don't think he will. All of our politicians keep talking about how it is vitally important that we do something about all of this debt soon, but they don't seem to stop spending money. I mean, altruistic, yes. Humane, yes. But how many billions of dollars were added to the national debt because the unemployment benefits were extended another 13 months? Politicians keep telling us that now is not the time for deficit reduction because it would harm our economic recovery. But the right time for deficit reduction never seems to come. The national debt statistics should shock you. Up to this point, the vast majority of Americans have been extremely apathetic and really don't understand what we're doing to future generations and recognize that it is criminal. How would you feel if you found out one day that your parents had run up millions of dollars in debt that you were now obligated to pay for? I think you'd be a little ticked. And rightly so. So if there are future generations, how are they going to feel about the debt that we've rung up that they're going to have to repay? Their quality of life has forever been diminished because of the debt that we've incurred and passed on to them. The largest debt the world has ever seen is our legacy to our children and grandchildren. How can we consign our descendants to debt slavery and feel good about ourselves? The America that we've all been enjoying is inevitably going to be wiped out by this debt. And we just keep spending more and more and more. The greed, not so much of you and me, although we all have our sins, but the overall greed, the Gordon Gekko mentality of our generation will be remembered for a long time. Both political parties equally culpable. Both of them have voted over and over again to keep running up the deficits. Big spending, Democrats, big spending, Republicans. We've reached a point where a horrific economic meltdown is inevitable. We're living in the biggest debt bubble in the history of the world. Never has there been a civilization as far in debt as the United States of America is today. And that debt continues to grow. Last night we talked about just if the interest rate moves up to 6%, what it does to our debt payments, just our payment on the interest of the debt. We're not paying down the debt, we're just paying the interest of the debt. We could get to a place with 10% income where our debt payments would be $2 trillion a year. As of December 28th, the U.S. national debt, $13,877,230,000. Let's try this again. $13,877,230,355,933. In essence, $14 trillion. If the federal government began right at this moment to repay the U.S. national debt at a rate of $1 per second, 440,000 years would pass before the debt was paid off. Think about that for a second. Don't let that just wash over you. If we were to pay back $1 a second, I'd take that. I'd end up with quite a few bucks at the end of the day. That would be good. But we're so far in debt, it would take 440,000 years to pay off our debt. If the government started repaying the national debt at a rate of $10 million a day, it would still take 3,800 years to pay off. $10 million a year, or a day rather. And it would still take 3,800 years to pay off the debt. The U.S. national debt is increasing by $4 billion every single day. $4 billion. Give me a tenth of that, and I'll be a happy man for a long time. The U.S. government's borrowing approximately $263 million more dollars every single minute. You've got to try and get your head around before you get filled up with happy smoke the next 18 months. Keep these statistics in the back of your mind. You know, people kept believing that the house prices are going to keep going up, keep going up, keep going up. People were buying 3, 4, 5 houses and rolling them over. Foreclosure. All of them. I've lost everything. But it wasn't supposed to happen. Tech industry, baby, things are just, a new stock offering every day and a new millionaire made every week. And baby, this is great. Let the good times roll. And what do you mean Yahoo just dropped from 100 down to 10? What do you mean the bottom just fell out of Microsoft? What do you mean Cisco? What? Wasn't supposed to happen. We keep printing money and we keep going further in debt. And the interest rate is going to go up, which will push us even further in debt. it will go pop. Either just naturally it'll get so big it'll go boom, or someone like China is going to come along and go, or someone like the Middle East and war and blowing the price of gasoline through the roof and boom. But there's no way now that it won't. September 30th, 1980. Not that long ago. Our debt was $907 billion. 30 years later. This is during the course of my life. 14 times larger. It was just under $1 trillion. Now it's just under 14 trillion in just 30 years. Recent U.S. Treasury report to the Congress. The U.S. national debt in 2015. If interest rates don't go up, and they will. If they were to stay the same, our national debt would be $20 trillion in 2015. I propose to you it's going to be quite a bit higher than that because of interest. It's being projected the U.S. government is going to be paying $900 billion just in interest on the national debt by 2019 if interest doesn't go up. $1 trillion $10 bills, if they were taped end to end, would wrap around the globe 380 times. The amount of money would still not be enough to pay off our debt. Are you starting to get a handle on what the heck is going on and how deep a hole we're in? U.S. Congress has raised the federal debt ceiling 6 times in the past 3 years. They're getting ready to do it again. The U.S. Congress added, the 111th, added more to the U.S. national debt than the first 100 U.S. Congresses combined. The 111th Congress got us into so much new debt, it breaks down to $10,429.64 for each of the 308 million people counted by the 2010 census. Our government currently has to borrow approximately 41 cents of every single dollar it spends. Of every dollar that we spend in America, so let's say you're getting an unemployment check. Every dollar that you get in that unemployment check, 41 cents is borrowed. When you break down the debt the U.S. government owes to China alone, $10,000 per every American family. That's what every American family owes China, 10 grand. If you were alive when Christ was born and spent $1 million every single day since that point, you still would not have spent $1 trillion. 2,000 years ago, Jesus is born. You spent $1 million every day, and you still would not have spent $1 trillion by now. We're going to accumulate $1 trillion new debt in 2011 alone. The Congressional Budget Office projecting the U.S. government debt held by the public will reach a staggering 716% of GDP by the year 2080, but don't worry, most of us won't be alive then. Matter of fact, I take that back. We will be and living with Christ, I believe. The American people don't want to hear any of this. I mean, some of you, I'm sure, are getting ready to, I can't take it. I got to turn it off, Vince. I can't take it. Remember, we have the hope of Christ. Remember that when all of this comes tumbling down, people are going to be looking for answers, and that will be our finest hour. That will be the time that we can look people in the eye and say with certainty, if we follow the Lord today, learn his ways, trust him, build up that trust, know that he does make our paths straight, you will be able to look that person who has just lost everything and say to them, follow the Lord. He will make your path straight. He will provide a way for you through this wilderness because he will have done it for you already. So don't turn it off. Don't turn your back. Don't be like every other American going, oh, I don't want to look at it. Look at it. Recognize the demon for what it is, but know that you have the answer in Jesus Christ. Our government just wants to tweak a few things. It's not that easy. But our nation right now is addicted to debt. Don't you be. I pray you did not go out and just out of frustration buy a bunch of Christmas presents on credit. Get out of debt. I believe the Lord has said to me, this will be the year that if we follow the Lord, He will release us, deliver us from our economic bondage. I don't mean prosperity and millions of dollars. I just mean He will deliver us from that crushing weight of debt this year. If we will follow Him, if we will serve Him, the Lord will provide a way for us this next year. We can't keep running up debt. We can't keep doing it individually, and as a nation, it's killing us. John Williams of Shadow Government Statistics says that if the federal government would have used GAAP accounting standards to calculate the federal budget deficit for 2009, it would have been $8.8 trillion, and there's simply no way out. The government's finances not only are out of control, but the actual deficit is not containable. Putting it into perspective, if the government were to raise taxes so as to seize 100% of all wages and salaries and corporate profits, it would still be showing an annual deficit using GAAP accounting. In like manner, given current revenues, if we stopped spending every penny, including defense and homeland security, other than for Social Security and Medicare obligations, the government would still be showing an annual deficit. We can't keep paying all our bills. There's not enough money coming in, and even if we took it all, there still wouldn't be enough money. The U.S. has no plan to get out of this debt. We're bankrupt. We're just playing out the hand. We're throwing money in the air and hoping people will get caught up in the euphoria. Like I said, I believe the Lord showed me that we've got 18 months to 2 years. And then it's going to come, it will be like rolling thunder, and you will hear it when this nation falls economically, and it's going to. But again, we have the hope of Jesus Christ. The mainstream media keeps pumping out the propaganda. The U.S. economy is on the road to grand recovery. Like that story on unemployment I read you just a few moments ago. Everything's going to be okay. We can handle this debt. We can't even make the... It could have been avoided. But a lot of things could have and should have been avoided had we been the watchmen on the wall that we should have been. But then again, God knew there was going to be an earthquake in Indiana. He knew all of this, and He's already provided for it. That's why, doesn't it make sense to commit our plans to Him? He already knows what's coming. He knows that that road that we're driving down, we think that's so great, is about to have a great big crack in it that goes down 50 feet. So when the Lord says, you're going to go off on this little country road, why the heck am I way out here? It's slow and boring and safe. It's safe. You will not die here. Over there you will have died. Ooh, thank you, Lord. And we might not ever know this side of heaven, that going down that windy, boring road saved our lives. But listening to the Lord, day of reckoning's coming, people. Take our last break of the night. You are watching and listening to Jericho only, and that's probably the last time I'll ever say that, because come Tuesday, you will be watching and listening to Crossing the World. Thank you for being with us. We'll be right back.